Welcome back. In this video, we are going to discuss what a modern sales to CS handoff looks like in a complex sales cycle and high-touch engagement. A modern sales to CS handoff process leverages technology, platforms, and AI for engagement. And let's get into some specifics and talk about a newer type of platform called the digital sales room, or also referred to deal rooms. These can be great tools not just for closing deals, but for facilitating the handover as well. If your sales team uses a deal room, we recommend adding CSMs to the deal room on committed deals that you are confident will close and are in the later stages. We want to expose the CSMs to the stakeholders, mutual action plans, and other key information that will help them prepare for their engagement. And if you don't use a deal room, consider other ways that you can begin to integrate CSMs into the engagement. This could be through CCing them on emails, sending them call recordings, or inviting them on calls where appropriate. Now, I do want to call out that CSMs are really busy. This isn't about adding CSMs to ad hoc and random calls. Sales and CS leaders should collaborate and agree on these steps and what types of calls to invite CSMs to so that the rules of engagement are clearly understood by all. The goal is to make effective use of collaboration opportunities and to share information to catch CSMs up to speed quickly, make clients familiar with their account team, and minimize the number of times sales reps need to repeat the same information. And I want to be really clear that this is not about pulling CSMs into random calls, emails, or deal rooms. This should be done methodically. But when it is approached in the right way, it can improve both efficiency and effectiveness for all parties involved, meaning the client, the seller, and the CSM. Okay, now let's move on to step 2. Second, we need to be thoughtful and methodical about the information we share between sales and CS. This should be done in a consistent way across all deals. And we recommend that the CRM should be updated with the client's problems, the actions that they will be taking to resolve these problems, what their desired results are, top business priorities, and other pertinent information, including what each stakeholder's priorities and goals are. It's really important to make note of any sensitive triggers that are driving this engagement. And what we mean by triggers is, what are the priorities that drove them to make this purchase? Why did they choose you, and why now? We need to ensure that the customer success team understands the goals that need to be achieved and by when. In other words, we need to make sure that we are sharing the client's part. Using the part framework in handoffs ensures that everyone is aligned on the problems and actions that need to be taken right away. It also ensures everyone understands the results that we will be tracking towards and when the results need to be achieved by. So now that we understand and are aligned on the type of information that needs to be exchanged between sales and customer success, let's talk about some other ways that we can share this information beyond fields in a CRM. So let's move on to step 3, which is share call recordings and call summaries. Sales should share relevant call recordings with the CSM so they can get the call summaries and review any key conversations. If you're using a call recording tool that supports tagging teammates in specific sections of a call, this can be a really helpful way to point the CSM towards critical pieces of the conversation. And again, this isn't just about sending the CSMs the entire database of your calls. It's about identifying the key ones that would be really helpful for them as they start engaging with this client. So now that we've shared a lot of information, we want to make sure that we are doing the actual handoff and introduction itself. And this takes us to step 4, which is the email introduction. So as step 4, an email introduction goes from the AE to the CSM and to all key stakeholders. One of the mistakes that we often see made during the handoff is that introductions are reduced to 1 or 2 stakeholders, and often it's the person who will be running point on the implementation on the client side. As a result, the CSM starts off single-threaded right away. And we know that this isn't good enough for closing on renewals. The introduction should include the stakeholders who were part of the buying committee, as well as the stakeholders involved in onboarding and adoption. While we do need to be considerate of the type of engagement that is appropriate for each stakeholder, it's critical for ongoing engagement and the eventual renewal, as well as hopefully some expansion deals, that we maintain all key relationships. We'll get to some tips on appropriate engagement and how to approach that in a few moments, but first, I want to call out the timing of the introduction. It should occur within 1 business day of the sale closing. What? 1 day, you might be saying? But I'm really busy. Yeah, well, we are all busy. And while I do empathize with being busy and needing to focus on closing other deals, I also empathize with the client who is likely eager to get going. And I also recognize the fact that buyer's remorse often creeps in, and we want to capitalize on the excitement and not deal with buyer's remorse. I also empathize with CSMs who get stuck in an uphill battle after buyer's remorse kicks in and they struggle to get clients to commit to onboarding, and then they suffer the consequences at renewal time. It's also one of those things that, from a sales rep's perspective, it's just better to get it over with sooner rather than later. It's one less thing on your mental load. Get it done quickly, efficiently, and effectively so you can move on seamlessly to the next deal. Next, consider the emails that need to go out. And notice that I said emails with an S. Although we want to make this as efficient as possible for us, we also want to make sure that our emails get read and that our engagement is effective. So one of the reasons why we like to do multiple emails is that nobody likes to read a novel when they open an email. So we want to keep our emails as brief as possible and split into multiple emails where appropriate. And we also want to leverage video. There are a few reasons for this, which I will share, but for this step, I just want to call out that I'd like for you to put yourself in the client's shoes. Let's start with the initial intro email. And this email should indicate the role of each person included and the next step the communal group will be taking together, so that everyone is aligned on the next steps and kickoff calls can begin to be scheduled. However, if there are very tactical and technical details that need to be shared, this is when we can start to split up our emails dependent on the level of information that is appropriate for various stakeholders. Now, you also need to make sure that everyone is on the same page and aligned. I recommend making an indication of this in the initial intro email, but then send a separate email with any tactical and technical details to the relevant parties and CC anyone who needs to be informed. As another mode of communication, we also encourage you to think about video. If there is anything that is complex or difficult to explain, then consider recording a video. Tone, pace, and context matters, so leveraging video can minimize confusion and reduce unnecessary back and forth. The mechanics of the intro can vary from company to company, depending on the complexity of the product and engagement. So map out both the customer experience and what you need to accomplish so that you can arrive at the optimal engagement and communication plan for your company and clients. Consider the customer's perspective, what's relevant to each stakeholder, and where there are opportunities to add efficiencies without reducing effectiveness. And so this is where you'll start thinking through where you might want to start splitting out some emails and recording those videos. At this point, we've covered quite a few steps and tactics to consider. I'd recommend taking a few moments to reflect on your sales to customer success handoff and identify what areas you can improve on. Just remember, don't think of it from only your internal perspective. Think of it from the customer perspective as well, and identify where you can remove friction and create efficiencies while not sacrificing effectiveness. In our next video, we will cover the final steps, which include the internal kickoff and the customer kickoff.